or not overlook. And what's taking place, because it takes place, doesn't mean that it's so. I mean, one of the things we point out is how ridiculous the status quo is sometimes. A lot of things we're talking about were not talked about 5 years ago because we were talking about them, and now we don't even talk about because they're boring. Right?
That's very accurate, yes.
So just because it is so doesn't mean that it's right. And I know you believe that in your heart. You're a prove it kind of guy.
Kind of an idealist at times, though.
All right. The practicality of it is what we were kind of describing, and how people should be practical. All right, that's fine. But words are words, and But as far as the MMFLA, I think we've resolved it, right? There's clearly some reach out or reach around to the city.
I'm going to actually forward that over to the Detroit News because I had not read that section that you just read, so that's actually influential. And that does settle the debate as far as I'm concerned. It clearly states that there's an ordinance requirement on the part of the local community to authorize. I mean, did I interpret that correctly? Because that will
have to
settle
be
this
in compliance with an ordinance.
That means Josh Hovey's not correct.
Josh Hovey is
what Jamie
incorrect.
said.
Josh is not correct?
According to attorney Michael Comorn and his not legal advice.
Well, and other attorneys and a common
and they're not legal advice.
And the
knowledge of how the
reading
local
of
communities
the CRMLA
generally
language.
operate when they're accepting businesses and stuff like that.
What's the section on that, please?
It refers back to Section 6, which we started with was acceptance provided by Section 4.
It's probably
a municipality may completely prohibit or limit the number. Let me see Section 4.
It's still unnecessary. I mean, I remember not that long ago, the city of Warren was struggling with how many used car lots they should have in a specific area of the city. And the city council got to dictate how many car lots were going to be licensed in the city of Warren. And this is not going to be any different. And to Rick's point, I mean, we asked to be treated like normal businesses, and this is, I mean, it is a little bit harsher because
I'll tell you what's the
but
bigger debate is the banning of, and this is where I think that they may be making the mistake, the banning of public consumption or private consumption. Consuming marijuana in public places, smoking marijuana prohibited by the. So this is because the reference here is that except is in Section 4, which is that this act does not authorize consuming marijuana in a public place or smoking marijuana where prohibited by a person who owns or occupies or manages and does not include in an area designated for consumption. All right, so
I mean that's it's not great, but it's. I mean, at the end of the day, what the lesson from all of that language is: don't be a dick. I mean, at the end of the day, some people don't like the smell of marijuana. They don't want to be exposed to it. So don't be an ass and expose people without their consent. And if you do that, everything will be fine.
Well, I remember I was talking to Jamie about this earlier. And Michael, when the MMMA first launched, one of the reasons why we put out the Michigan Medical Marijuana Magazine and the MMMA website was created was because people thought they understood what the medical marijuana law was, and they were wrong, and they were ending up in jail. And it was a communications tool. It was important to get the word out there. And I was flabbergasted at that time. I'm like, man, everybody can find the language. It's in the magazine. All the newspapers are talking about it. People still don't know what the rules are. And as far as legalization goes, people still don't know what the rules are.
They don't.
So we have a very need for us to continue these conversations, especially as licensing and regulatory affairs changes the definitions of shit like they do all the time with the MMMA. It's an evolving conversation.
The government of
Here's some other stuff that you can throw out there, because
a couple more lines. Give us some bars.
Let's not say. So this act, Section 4, this is in paragraph 4 of. There's a limitation, in that reference that we had in Section 6, or limitation in Section 4. This act allows a person to prohibit or otherwise regulate the consumption, cultivation, distribution, processing, sale, or display of marijuana and marijuana accessories on property the person owns.
Oh,
that implies you can regulate sales.
Does that
allow
mean
someone
that
to sell on your own private property?
That's
I can authorize you to sell and do all these things.
That's interesting.
Occupies or manages, except that this is good. The lease agreement, well, not really, may not prohibit a tenant from lawfully possessing, consuming marijuana by means other than smoking. So So it means that you can at least vape. But
Little vape
Vape, medibles.
but this says here that may be that the city,
depositories.
because the cities don't have control over residential businesses. This I don't know. This conflicts with because this seems to suggest, and it can't be in and of itself, but this sets forth the authority to give the power to engage in the business the owner of the property.
Let me
which
remind
is-
you, Michael, this law overrules the Michigan Home Rule City Act. This is a voter-directed initiative, so it takes precedence. So if that says you can sell out of your house, you can authorize someone to sell out of your house, the Michigan Home Rule Cities Act doesn't ban it.
Whoops.
I mean, score, right? Wouldn't it appear to you?
Which may be the reason why it's. I mean, listen, we still require an opt-in, but the banning of it may address this.
The banning is of businesses, not of activity on private property, right? Because that private property section is completely independent and separate from the section describing businesses, right? And it's not referenced in the business controlling section either. It doesn't say as the business is described in section blah blah blah. So wouldn't that be a separate individual section and right of the legalization program?
It doesn't say specifically residential. We can imply that these activities cannot be
Commercial property.
prohibited. It says property. The person owns, implying people and property, not businesses.
That would be pretty fucking sweet. That would be really sweet.
So that's only if they
And
opt
especially
in.
because it's a,
That's good because Esteban is
That's
about
only
to
if
be
this-
moving
if
some
the
honey.
municipality issues the opt-in.
It's
Is
a
that what you're saying?
cartel, the
Say
honey
again?
cartel.
That's only if the municipality issues the opt-in.
no. I'm saying that this has to be read in conjunction with everything else. So
Yeah, it can't
this
be
is
read
a
in
section.
isolation. It's part of a bigger act. Still tantalizing, though, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's good discussion.
I don't want to be the test
It
case.
stands
No,
alone. It stands
no,
alone in the section.
No, loose lips
Tommy's
sink
nodding
ships.
his head over there. He doesn't want to be the test case.
When we
either.
talk about Esteban's black market honey, of course, we're talking about honey that is pure and doesn't contain any other adulterants in it, right?
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
It's organic.
It's organic honey.
It's organic.
It's only black market
it's healthy.
because
It's all natural.
Steve
and
farms
organic.
it himself from the bees.
He does. What we were discussing, Man and I were just saying that he's the queen bee, and we're just all hovering around him.
He really is.
We're all
He
buzzing
really
around.
is. It's good.
So let's have a quiz. David Radoy, what'd you learn tonight? Does the city have to opt in or opt
I
out?
missed coming on. And
Did the
hanging
city have
out
to
with
opt in or
Planet
opt out?
Creatures. I think they have to opt in. And
Can persons
and
open
can opt
businesses
out.
in the residences if they themselves want it or their landlord allows it?
This was the last thing we discussed, David.
I think I have to think more on it, but it would appear that it's possible.
That is so not.
And Rick's going to be the test
You were
case.
listening to.
That's not legal advice.
I don't think I'm sold on your logic there.
I wasn't. I was point out some words. Let's read it again.
There was some stretching going on, but
Yeah.
I think it was
Let me read
definitely
this.
an
This
interpretation.
act allows a person to prohibit.
Me, so it allows me to
It allows a
prohibit,
person,
right, or otherwise regulate.
which could be you, landlord over tenant, or me, owner of my house, or me, owner of my house, renting to you, tenant. So this act allows a person to prohibit or otherwise regulate.
Regulate
To
means
prohibit
authorize.
or otherwise regulate. So you can ban it or you can
Authorize it.
the consumption, cultivation, distribution, processing,
It sounds so good. I'm
And in
almost
case
going to
there's any
volunteer
doubt,
to be the test
so
case.
sale.
Seriously.
I know it says sale.
So the dictionary, the definition.
The owner could say no.
Yeah.
The city
Fuck remuneration.
Yeah,
Well-
Fuck remuneration.
it doesn't take
Fuck-
away the city's
No, the new thing is not
ability
fuck
to
those
say,
cities.
no, you can't
Fuck
do that.
remuneration.
Will you read that one more
Seriously,
time?
sale.
the word sale appears
You get to regulate sales on your own property.
Yes. And if we look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary for the definition of regulate, it's not kind to the state's cause.
Let's hear it.
It's control,
Or display of marijuana
or
accessories on property that the person owns, occupies, or manages, except that the lease agreement may not prohibit the tenant from lawfully possessing and consuming marijuana by means other than a vape pen.
a vape pen.
This is vape pen.
That's not what it says.
Okay. Smoke. All right, never mind.
It's not what it says.
Michael's interpreting this.
Michael's paraphrasing.
So tell us about regulation. What does it
It
say?
says control or supervise something, especially a company or business activity, by means of rules and regulations. So if you took that definition, it would infer that some sort of activity would have to be occurring.
And if you can regulate that activity, it means you can authorize it or restrict it or ban it all the way, right?
That's true.
That's how you regulate. Again, not a test case.
Yeah,
You
this
don't
is
want
not
anything-
legal advice.
Nope.
I mean, maybe David Rudoy wants to give some legal advice on the definition of regulate, but I don't think that Michael does.
No, I like what Michael's talking about right now, though. When we start getting into the actual law itself, when we start looking at the actual words that people are either interpreting correctly, misinterpreting, or that haven't even been explored yet, that's cutting edge shit, man.
It is.
It's good stuff.
It is.
I mean, I think there are. Look, if you take to a city attorney, the advice of a city attorney is going to be to pass a law. It's like their advice. Like if they want to be clear,
That's their
that's
default
right.
position, right?
Yeah, and it's proactive. It's no doubt about it. They can't be
That's what
in
you
it to
paid.
adopt laws that And I've if I was giving advice to city attorneys who, objectively, what should they do? Is they should all adopt the Prop 1 as into the local laws, because then there's local people, if they're going to have tickets that they're going to charge, it goes to them locally. Otherwise, it almost takes out of play any prosecutions or civil infractions being written on local police officers, because they don't have the authority to do it. They can't run them under state law. They can't be prosecuted. I'm sorry. They couldn't be. The money couldn't go to the city. That's what I'm saying. So for the city attorney, a good place. Listen, if we're going to start giving out civil infraction tickets, and our cities are going to be giving them out, and they're going to go to court and pay, just go to the state. We want that. We want that diaper money here at our court. I'm just saying, like it's
Is this Brothers in Arms that's playing
Yeah.
in the background? It's awesome. It's great.
I found the obvious one.
I just saw in a newspaper article, one community in Oakland County said, we've told our officers don't confiscate any cannabis because we don't know what to do with it. We can't keep it, we can't hold it.
I read
and
that.
we can't return it back to them because that would be a federal violation.
Yeah. Even though they're not
win.
bound by federal law.
Win, right? I mean, when the cops say we can't grab your cannabis, that's a win for the community, isn't
It
it?
is.
I like that.
Don't touch that. No.
It went from I want all of it to that's
Yeah.
kryptonite.
Yeah.
I can't. That's radioactive, man. I don't want to have anything to do with that cannabis. In just a few short years. It's a big smile.
You know
on
what I'm
David's
stuck
face.
on? You know what I'm stuck on? The false and we'll continue to look through here, but the prohibitions in court. Have you seen any no dogs allowed in court, no marijuana either? Just kidding. Well,
No
this is
marijuana in
what we were
court
talking about
either,
earlier.
right.
No, I've seen photocopies or pictures from several different court jurisdictions where they have similar statements. And one was just posted on the Safer Michigan listserv, too. So I'm not sure which
Well,
one that
the
was.
point is that there's nothing in the law. We just read, but I'm saying, think about that case, right? Someone walks in with 2.5 ounces in their fucking backpack. The sheriff grabs it, and they say, "What are you doing, man? What are you not to bring it in here?" And then they say, "Who says what?" She said, "Where are you getting it from?" It's like, "Our judge." No, the cops got a judge said you can't bring it in here. So now, it is who's prosecuting that case?
Well, is there a case, or do they just refuse you entry? Because, like, if you have a banned substance at the door, right? You pass a metal detector,
Well,
you
that's
got
what
a
I'm
pocket knife,
saying.
and you don't want to give it up. They don't.
Do they make it into a crime? That's what I'm saying. Are they saying, "Hey, I know it doesn't say in the law, but we're judges.
We
You
make
need
the
to know
law.
we decided
You break our
that
rules.
the federal law applies here."
Yes.
Now I realize that if you're going to get prosecuted, it's going to be in state court.
Yeah.
And I realize that if there's going to be a judge sitting on the bench, it's going to be a state judge. And I realize that everything coming out of my mouth that justifies this is federal law and it doesn't apply to anything that I'm saying. But be aware that we made this law. And if you bring that shit into here, you're going to get hurt, and I'm a judge and I'm making law. Like none